Good afternoon and welcome to our very first Ask the Expert session, which we are holding on business travel, because so many of you have been asking me whilst I've been talking to you about what I know about what's happening with business travel. And we know that you are constantly needing to be one step ahead of your executives, and that when you have nuggets of information that you're able to share with them, it means that they understand that you are up to date with what the gen is and you've got your finger on the pulse. So we thought we would help you a little bit. And in order to do that, we have got the services here this afternoon of both Rob Burgess and Jeff Emmenis, and they are both huge experts within their industries. So Rob is a leading UK expert on business travel. He runs the website Head for Points here in the UK, and he has won numerous awards for his business journalism in relation to travel. And I get his newsletter every morning along with over 1 million other people, and it keeps me totally up to date on what's going on in the travel industry. And as you all know, I travel enormously. Jeff is a great friend of the magazines. We've worked with him for a long period of time, and he owns Vertis Aviation, which obviously is a private aviation company, and he's here to give us his viewpoint on that for those of you that have high net worth individuals that you work with, so that you can look at the options if you absolutely at the moment have to get somebody from A to B. So then, what I'm going to do is to just give you a little summary of the market at the moment so that you get a bit of an overview. And we all know that the travel industry is really facing the biggest crisis that it has probably since 9/11, and maybe it's even bigger than that. We've got some industries, some of the aviation companies that have grounded 90% of their fleets, some of them grounded, I believe, their airplanes altogether, and no real telling when that's likely kick back in. And for somebody like myself who travelled 9 times around the world last year, that's a little bit disconcerting. It's been central to what we do. So I thought I would start off by asking you, Rob, what are the main things that you're seeing coming into your inbox right now?
Well, I mean, to be honest, with very few of our readers actually flying anywhere, it's primarily refunds, how to get money back from tickets that are booked, trips that are booked, and really just trying to get themselves back into a position where they've got the money back and got often the frequent flyer miles back in their account, so they can start planning ahead for the future. It's been disappointing, really, how hard it's been, certainly with the big airlines and stuff, hello Max, my son, to get really just to, they're under a very strong legal liability to pay back money for cancelled flights. It's been very, very hard to get this money paid. Thank you very much. It's my coffee order being delivered to me. Cappuccino, thank you, Max. So the key issue, it's been crazy. I mean, we've been running articles on how to hack the British Airways website in order to get the refund pages up to actually order a cash refund, as opposed to having to take a voucher. And it's bizarre when you have to do that. Fundamentally, tell people how to, effectively break into the back door of someone's website just to get the money you're legally due. I never thought it's something we'd be covering, but that's it. People are greedy. People, it's not that people want the airline to go bust, but people who lost their jobs or been furloughed or have got 4-figure sums out for trips they've booked would like the money back they're legally due, please, if that's not too difficult.
I would totally agree with you. Jeff, what are you seeing mostly?
So pretty much for the month of April, which we're still just in, we did quite a lot of repatriation flights because the airlines were cutting back on their capacity. I think by the end of March, we'd repatriated hundreds of people from Africa, Europe, Middle East, and the US back to where they needed to be. And that tailed down pretty much from the second half of April to where we are today. We've seen quite a few cargo inquiries, and cargo in terms of moving heads of cattle, believe it or not. We've seen moving cattle, yes, sheep down to the Middle East, because you've got Ramadan at the moment. We're moving PPE, personal protection equipment, PPE, on some cargo flights out of the US right now. And we've also started seeing some sort of clients coming back and asking us how they can fly. So we performed a trip for a client, short notice, this past weekend, out of Israel to France and then down into Northwest Africa. And then we have another client who owns a major food manufacturing company and needed to be repatriated as well from Greece back to where he was going. So, it went very, brought everybody back, quietened down, and now we're starting to see sort of green shoots appear because people still need to slowly get moving back in. Factories need to reopen. As the economies restart, people still need to get to their factories or to be with their employees and so forth.
Yeah. Now, Rob, you touched on refunds there and the problems that people are having with that. Personally, we have £20,000 right now on our credit card because we booked all the flights in advance for our conferences. So, whilst for the general public, booking travel might just be £300 or £600 here and there. For companies, it can be a huge amount of money that we're then paying interest on and looking at having to repay when there's not a lot of income coming in. What would be your advice to companies that have that kind of money sitting there?
I mean, at the end of the day, if a flight's being cancelled, you have a legal right to the money. So nothing stops you trying to put a charge back through on the credit card that was paid in the credit card in the first place. That's unfortunately that's going to be, but we really have to tell people to go to American Express or whatever and demand that they file a chargeback against the airline because the airline is stalling. I mean, I have £2,500 of Virgin tickets which have been cancelled, and Virgin's saying in 90 to 100 days for me to get. I mean, I can live with that for 90 to 100 days, but a lot of people can't. If you're in American Express, they can have the money back in your account within 72 hours. Mm-hmm. They may take it back if Virgin dispute the refund, which obviously they won't. But if you really need the money, I think that's the best way to go now. It's unfortunate, but they're just playing games. And you've probably seen today in the press, but there's a move coming up to some of European, not UK, but a lot of European governments are now trying to get the law changed so that airlines do not have to offer refunds. Now it's possible that will be underwritten by the European government, so that at least if the airline goes bust, you will get your money back at the end. But it's not helpful.
No, really not. Dinah Livsage is asking, is there no obligation on credit card companies to make sure that you get refunded?
But for personal travel, yeah, if your flight is cancelled, then you have a legal right. If the flight departs, if you bring on a credit card, it's over £100 per person, unless there's often a problem, your tickets are not individually over £100, then yeah, you can do a Section 75 chargeback, and the credit card company will pay you. I mean, I'd rather not do this because it's a lot of work for the credit card companies, and you're just bogging their employees are at home, and it's just causing more effort for everyone concerned. But yeah, it is unfortunately the only way around it. But it's just, if the airlines bust, it's one thing, but if the airlines aren't bust and still trading, having to do this just to get money back, which you're legally entitled to, is unfortunate, to be polite.
Of course. And I know a lot of people are saying that they're having huge problems getting through to the airlines. They are phoning and they're holding for hours and hours on end. What would be your best advice for people that are having to hold for long periods of time?
Bizarrely, from what I understand it, British Airways has closed a couple of call centres down. So if you get through to the right call centre, and it's random luck, unfortunately, then I know people tell me they've been answered in 15 minutes or so. If you're working for someone who's got a British Airways Gold card, you can ring the Gold line. The Gold line is answered. The Gold line basically pushes you to the front of the queue. So if you get the person you're working for to give you a Gold line number, or you can Google it. I mean, it's not, once you've got the guy's frequent flyer number, they'll still deal with you. That works. Virgin Atlantic has a SMS and WhatsApp service, which is actually very good. Slightly bizarrely, it takes them 2 to 3 days to reply, but once you actually you get an instant acknowledgement. 2 to 3 days later, at some random point, you'll get a text message back saying, "Hi, what do you want?" And you can literally type in what you want, and it will be done within 10 minutes. That's how I got my Virgin flight cancelled. Okay. So that's, as long as you don't mind waiting a couple of days. The only snag with that system is it works 24 hours a day. And I know people who've got messages at 3 in the morning from Virgin saying, "Okay, what do you want?" And if you don't answer in 15 minutes, they close the case. So, so you have to hope they do it when you're awake. But it does actually work as long as you're about and you can answer the reply when it finally comes in.
All right. And so what are your rights then if you've actually had a flight cancelled? Because many airlines are insisting that they issue vouchers as opposed to refunds, and I believe that's illegal. What's your understanding?
It's illegal under European law, yeah. If you've got, an internal Asian flight from Malaysia to Bangkok on Malaysia Airlines, you may not be covered. But again, realistically, if you went to your credit card company and bought a chargeback through, that would almost certainly be successful. But what is different is hotels. If you have a hotel booked and the hotel is open, you simply can't get to that country, then you have no legal right to a refund. The hotel's open. If you could somehow get yourself to Dubai tomorrow or south of France or whatever, and they would take you in, then it's not their fault you can't get there. And then you have no legal right. And then it gets more difficult because nothing's cancelled, as long as they're still taking bookings but that, for a lot of people, that's a bigger problem at the moment. So a lot of people who fly economy, the hotels they've booked are more expensive than the flights were in the first place.
Yes, and I mean, especially for the assistants, they will have booked events and they will have booked rooms for their executives all over the place. Yeah. So, I know, Jeff, you had a situation quite recently like that, didn't you?
Personally, I had at a conference, I was heading down to a conference in Abidjan, the African CEO Summit, and my flight got the event got cancelled. I was able to get a refund on my flight because it was just before this got quite serious, and I did myself do a chargeback, Rob, on an upgrade. And I'm battling now with the organizers who I booked the room through, but thankfully I paid on my credit card and had also taken out cancellation insurance, ironically, but I can't get the money back. So, and it's quite a significant sum. Africa is quite expensive. And so I'm going to be discussing with American Express how I can get that back. I may not have recourse because, as Rob pointed out, of course, the hotel was open and so forth, but the event managers cancelled our conference. So it's going to be tricky, but we'll certainly give it a go. So I can speak from experience.
Yeah, again, if you've got Hilton Gold card or a Marriott Platinum card and the like, if you sort of wave that around in your discussions, that often helps. I mean, when ITB in Berlin was cancelled, the world's biggest travel show, it was very interesting to see who got their money back on, because it was cancelled with 48 hours notice. But it's interesting to see who got their money back and who didn't, which hotels played ball. And I've got Hilton Diamond card, and Hilton refunded me no problem overnight after an email went in. And there's tons of the internet about hotels in Berlin who kept the money and wouldn't refund other people. So again, if you've got status, it's worth flexing that muscle if you can.
Okay, and talking about status then, are the airlines on the whole extending their membership window for those who can't travel?
On the whole, unless you're called British Airways, yes. Most, virtually all now, fundamentally, all the hotel companies, there's probably some exceptions, but in general, all the hotel companies have basically written off this year and have said, look, whatever your status is this year, you'll have it next year. So my Marriott Platinum is now good till February 22. Most of the airlines have done the same. British Airways has not. British Airways has done virtually nothing so far. People whose memberships were due to expire March, April, May have been told they could requalify on 2/3 of usual status points. Once you get past May, obviously people will have done fewer and fewer flights in their year, and it'll be harder and harder to requalify them. I think at some point BA will just bite the bullet and say, wherever you were this year, you'll be next year. But there's other problems then, because you don't. All that means is there will be even more elites next year than there were this year, and then you're going to be faced with airport lounges which won't be allowed to host as many people as they previously were. I mean, perhaps BA is being smart. Perhaps BA is thinking, look, let's basically lose half of our gold members. I mean, at least there'll be only half the number of people in the gold card lounge next year, and then we can meet our distancing requirements if those are still in place. But perhaps they're not being totally crazy about it, because there's not a lot of direct competition in the UK if you lose your BA status. It's slightly different for hotels because hotel status is more about upgrades and things like free breakfast, and that's not really affected by this. But I can kind of see why BA. They may cave in because everybody else has caved in. I can also see the logic in thinning out the numbers rather than making everyone gold next year and then no one being allowed into the lounges, or with it being like a half-hour wait to get in because only 100 people can get in at any one time.
Well, it's almost impossible to book rewards flights anyway with your rewards points. So if everybody has got all their rewards points next year and are trying to use them, it's going to be horrendous.
It's actually, oddly enough, it's not bad at the moment. I just booked for Easter next year, but we got 4 business class to San Francisco and back over prime Easter dates, no problem. BA is opening up substantial, perhaps not as much as it could do, but there's a lot more about than there usually is, frankly. It's worth looking. I mean, now the flights next Easter have just about opened up. BA works 355 days ahead. So now is a good time to start looking for next Easter. I was surprised, actually. I wasn't expecting to get those California. Just the holiday we were meant to have this year, that I was hoping to rebook it for next year. And yeah, I got the dates I wanted, no problem at all.
So Ruth is asking, is it worth booking ahead on refundable rates for flights in the hope that they do go ahead?
Refundable rates, yeah, I mean, nothing to lose apart from the hassle of ringing the airline to cancel it. But if you can cancel through a GDS or through a corporate travel agent, and it's not actually physically you've got to sit on the phone to British Airways to get through to make the cancellation, then no harm. But you have to understand that the chance that the flight you book will go on the exact time, on the exact day, on the exact aircraft type they've promised you is nil, effectively. What we're gonna, there's currently 10 British Airways flights in New York a day at the moment. That will probably restart at 4 or 5 when things start picking up. They'll swap the big aircraft for smaller planes. Any seat assignments you've got will go. There's no guarantee. If you might have booked for new business class, you might find yourself back on the old business class seat. So there's not, with so little being guaranteed, whether it's actually worth the bother of booking now, I don't know. That's
okay. And then we'll come back to you in one moment, Jeff, but I have a question here from John Lawrence saying, hi Rob, I have a BA flight booked and paid in full using one companion voucher for 2 passengers in September. If I can't fly in September, are BA extending their voucher period?
Yeah, the vouchers have already been extended by 6 months. That should already show. So all vouchers, even ones that have already been used, are extended by 6 months. So when it comes back to you, it'll be extended. Oddly enough, if you actually take the voucher, BA's voucher is now valid till April 22. If you take the voucher, which I don't normally recommend, it will also extend your voucher to April 22. So if you really want a very, very long extension, don't take the cash refund, take the vouchers from British Airways. Of course, you don't get cash back at that point. But this only changed on Monday. But that's a little workaround if you don't think you can travel even with a 6-month extension.
All right. So, Jeff, I want to ask you, I am seeing quite a lot of people who are stranded, people that I work with all around the world. What would be your advice for them, other than obviously hire you guys to get them home?
Well, one of the so that's quite good. We had this for a customer recently. To give an example, I think real life examples of always help people understand. So we had a customer that was stranded down in Ghana, Accra, and they needed to get back to Denmark. We were going to repatriate them, but actually at that time it worked out quicker that the embassy had put a few nationalities together and had gone via Spain to Paris, actually. And then we picked the family up and brought them back to a particular location. So I would advise still to check if there is a need right now to work with your embassy of the people traveling, to see that there are still repatriation flights going on. In fact, I know of one that's going out of Johannesburg up to London just in the next few days. So there's still flights going on. There's a Lufthansa flight on Friday taking repatriating Austrians and Germans. So there are things going on. There are people that, but it is going to be on an embassy level. Also, some airline flights going on, but it will be very, very, very few, and if they actually happen. I do know that some of the people have been saying, of course, we had it here in Switzerland where Edelweiss and Swiss have sent aircraft as far as Australia and down to Chile. The cost of the seats are quite expensive, but if you need to get back, there still are some options available to you.
And how long do I need to give you notice-wise if I wanted to fly with you? Because you used to be able to do it within a couple of hours, didn't you?
That's it. I mean, you know, obviously with European freedom of the skies, even over to the US and so forth, generally on long haul trips, we would ask for somewhere between 24 to 48 hours, particularly going to Asia. And to the US, you could do in a couple of hours. Europe, if you called us up and asked for a plane within 2 to 3 hours, we would have something ready to pick you up and take you, example, an Amsterdam to Luxembourg or something like that. The trip we did recently going from Athens to Zagreb, that took nearly 5 days to arrange. There was a weekend in between, of course, but sponsor letters, the executive traveling, he was going back to his factory. They wanted to see a letter of employment, stamped. They wanted passports, sponsor letters, and all kinds of additional documents that you would never, ever need before. So that certainly, it's possible generally, but it takes a lot of paperwork to get there. But, you know, and also, of course, quarantine rules apply. If you're, depending where you're coming in from, it could be that they will ask you for a certificate of good standing in terms of your health. Where have you been? You know, where do you plan to go afterwards? And you may have to go into quarantine for up to 7 days when you arrive at your destination. If it's a day trip, depending again where you're going, there might be different ways that we can do it. We just did this flight, as I mentioned before, going out of Israel, coming into France, changed planes and went down to West Africa, and our passengers had no issues. But we advised them beforehand of what we needed and to give us as much lead time as possible, because another example, we had customers sitting on a plane going to Larnaca from London. On the plane, the Cypriot civil aviation authorities changed the regulations and wanted certificates from each passenger saying that, you know, that they were free from COVID-19. And so it changes. So notice helps.
Definitely. Can you tell me, Rob, what you are seeing as safety measures that the airlines are putting into place to make sure that people are feeling safe when they're getting on planes currently?
It's interesting. Actually, someone sent me an email from Alitalia they'd had this week, which explained in great gory detail how they were operating. It's not great. I mean, British Airways at the moment, on a few flights they're doing, is basically saying, you know, bring your own food effectively. You will get, you know, even in business class, you're capped at a pre-wrapped sandwich and a cup of coffee. We're not serving anything which requires handling by the crew. BA's not doing masks yet. Lufthansa is now forcing you to wear a mask. Alitalia is forcing you to wear a mask. Air Canada's enforcing masks. Obviously, all the lounges are closed. All the shops are closed at Heathrow. So it's a very sort of sparse experience. So not something you'd actually do pleasurably. Whether, you know, does this really make a difference? It's not. It's not clear. I mean, whether you can realistically expect people to wear a mask for a long flight, I don't know. But it's still, you know, how long this lasts for, I don't know. I mean, realistically, will people be forced to wear masks? Are airlines really not going to serve food for 12 months? I don't know, really. It's very, very hard to tell. You know, I mean, yeah, there are a couple of British Airways cabin crew who've died from coronavirus. It's not entirely clear if they caught it on planes or not before it's kicked off. But, you know, it has hit them fairly close to home. But, you know, I'm relatively, you know, casual about it. Realistically, you know, the number of people in the country who are actively transmitting it at any one time is very low. The chance of them being on your plane is even lower. The chance of them giving it to you on the plane is even lower. How much of this is about just making people feel safe as opposed to actually genuinely helping their health, I don't know.
Do you have any kind of pointers, Rob, as to how long you think it's going to be before it gets back to normal? Because I saw a report saying it was going to be 2023. Is that just scaremongering?
Absolutely no. I think it depends. I mean, realistically, it varies by group and by demographic. I mean, I don't see many care homes organising foreign trips in the near future. But I also, if you're 21, you just come out of university, you've got a gap year, you're just going to sit at home. If you can get on a plane and go somewhere, you're going to do it. If you're under 30, you are almost risk. I mean, you're not no risk, but you're almost risk free from this, at least from serious illness. Are youngsters going to want to sit around? I get a weird thing. Even some healthy older people are thinking, what? I haven't got that many years left. I might spend 2 years locked in my house, or shall I actually travel and try and see some of the world while I've got a chance? There are people, I don't think this is bad. I mean, certainly Brits, British people like to travel. This is a small island with bad weather, and Brits like to get out. That's not necessarily the same across all countries. If you're living in the States, you can see basically, you could travel with America, for the rest of your life without getting bored of it. I think that's not quite the case in the UK.
Okay, I have a very specific question here for you from Jennifer Chamberlain, who says, I should have been flying to Prague tomorrow. The flights have been cancelled and I have no news from the airline since the emails to cancel the flights. Are they allowed to reimburse less than the value I paid for the tickets?
No, the airline itself is not. If you book through a travel agent, the travel agent, probably in its small print, has a clause that says they will be a £50 or something admin fee if we have to refund or reissue your ticket. So from the airline, no, you're fine. From a travel agent, you'll probably find there was something nasty in the T&Cs, which you never actually read at the time you booked, but which could now come back to bite you. Also have, and also some travel agents, one very big one in particular, which has changed its terms and conditions retrospectively to impose an administration fee. And if you go on its website now, it's charging quite a chunky sum to process refunds. If you go back to the T&Cs you were hopefully emailed at the time you booked, you'll find there's no fee in there. So even if you are asked to pay a fee and the current terms and conditions say you have to pay a fee, try and get hold of a copy of the terms and conditions as of the day you booked. So you might find that clause wasn't actually there.
All right, so to go back to vouchers then, because I think a lot of people are very concerned about this voucher situation, mainly because they're worried that if the airlines go bust, what redress do they then have if they've accepted vouchers as opposed to accepting a cash refund?
Yeah, and the truth is I don't know, because we all know in the past when shops have gone bust, anyone who held a gift card from that shop got nothing and could not do a credit card chargeback. You bought a gift card, you had the gift card, if you didn't spend it, it was your fault. In the same way, if British Airways give you a gift voucher effectively for £500 and British Airways gets bust, which by the way is very, very unlikely, is that actually covered under credit card chargebacks? It might not be, I mean, the original flight is covered. If you booked for a flight and a BA goes bust, the credit card company will repay you. If you take a refund for a flight and they give you a voucher, and you haven't used that voucher by the time they go bust, my gut feeling is you have no rights and you've lost your money. But I'm not an expert on that. But you asked for a voucher, they gave you a voucher, it's your fault you haven't used it. I think.
And will you actually be able to use them? Because, if we've all got all these people with vouchers from this year who all suddenly want to travel next year, what does that look like?
No, well, BA is not letting you book by phones. You're just getting through to BA on the phone to book using your voucher is virtually nil anyway. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. A lot of people also are getting confused, but these vouchers do not guarantee you a flight. So a lot of people are emailing me thinking they cancelled a flight to New York and their voucher entitles them to a flight to New York. It doesn't. It just entitles them to the same money they paid before. So if prices end up going up quite a bit because airlines are going to fly half their seats going forward, capacity is well down, you still may not, when you're asked for another few £100 on top and you try to rebook, you might change your mind about going. And when you're stuck with a voucher. So
your advice would be to hang on, to talk to them and to get your refund?
My advice, with one exception of if you've got British Airways, American Express 2-for-1 voucher, where taking the voucher now appears to be beneficial, I would strongly recommend bearing it out on the phone to demand, well, you have to demand, just ask for the cash back. Because frankly, if you take the voucher, you've got to ring up. Even if you don't want to sit on the phone all day, you've got to ring up to use the voucher. So you're not by taking the voucher online, you're not getting away from the fact that at some point in your life, you're going to have to sit on the phone for 3 hours to BA, because the vouchers are only redeemable by phone. So best to bite the bullet now, get the cash back, get your Avios back if it's a frequent flyer ticket, and then you've got your own, you can rebook at your own free will. You also might want to book with another airline, of course. It may be that, there's going to be some very, very cheap fares out there. Committing yourself to rebooking on British Airways because you've got a voucher might not be the smart thing to do.
No. Jeff, you were telling me this morning that there are 12 airlines that have written to the government.
Yes,
and that kind of ties in with what Eva is asking here, who says that she's sure that airlines must be inundated with refund applications right now. Surely that will create a delay in processing. Do you think governing bodies such as IATA will instruct scheduled airlines to complete refund requests within a given timescale because of COVID-19? Quite the reverse from what you were telling me earlier, I think.
Just from what I saw, it was in the newspaper that 12 countries, including Belgium, interestingly enough, had written to the EU asking them to please suspend the law which allows refunds to be processed in cash. So I think the airlines are really struggling. I mean, I just skimmed over it. I've not gone into the details, but I myself was quite taken aback by that, because it just felt like daylight robbery, really, because the law is there to protect people, and particularly in these sort of circumstances. But yes, I think it was in the Telegraph, perhaps, or in the Guardian.
Yeah. Now, you obviously have your private aviation company, and I know last year you started doing almost like charter for your smaller jets and allowing people to kind of fly together. Are people still wanting to do that, or is it because of COVID, everybody wanting to fly independently?
No. Everybody wants to fly independently. So what we're finding with our customers is that they, and even some of our aircraft owners, so I'll go onto the aircraft owner side, that some of the aircraft we charter out to our customers that we manage, charter management, they've said to us, I'm parking the aeroplane up and I'm only using it for my family and our friends and so forth. So I don't want anybody else on the aeroplane. And that's their right to do so. It's a very personal asset, of course. And our customers that are traveling on charter, it generally tends to be very close colleagues or families. And there are some requirements even for that. Some of the crew are asking that the passengers also do wear masks. And the airplanes are, disinfected, of course, before and after every trip, quite heavily. So it does depend. You've really got two different sides here of people using airplanes.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another question for Rob here, which I'm not going to put up on the screen because it's quite long. I'm going to read it to you. It says, Samantha says, "Hi, Rob. I have international connecting flights for October 2020. One of the flights is shown as cancelled, but the airline are only offering voucher/miles or a rebook for flights by February 2021. These were non-refundable, but they've cancelled a section of the flight, essentially making the ticket invalid. What would you advise?" Yeah, correct. I mean, with a cancelled segment, then effectively the whole thing is cancelled. You can have a full cash refund. As we know, most airlines are trying to get out of paying the cash refund, but as long as you booked it on a credit card, that's the sort of thing where I would go straight back to American Express or whatever and file a chargeback. At some point, it's very difficult. I mean, the airlines are doing all they can to avoid their legal requirements to pay up. For them, it's they don't care, frankly. They just want to keep the money in the bank. If you want the cash, charge back. It's the best way now, friend. You're wasting your time sitting on the phone trying to talk them around. Yeah. Is it very expensive to fly on a private jet?
It can be. Depends on how it can be. I mean, it depends on the size of the jet that you have, the distances that you're going. If you have specific age requirements, like some major multinationals will only fly on an aircraft size. with the year of manufacture at this point, and so it's very tailored business aviation. And I want to go away from the word private jets, because the business, it's now become business. It's always been business aviation, but it's no more important now, because we in crises, the first thing that people do is cut private aviation and business travel and so forth. But actually, we, for the first time, I think in a long time, become an essential service for moving not just passengers but also cargo and key workers that need to go. There's still oil rigs that need people changed, and they're using business aircraft to do that. And so forth. In terms of pricing, I mean, if you're looking for a small trip, an example in Athens to Zagreb and back for the day, you could be paying around €6,500, which if you've got 3 to 4 people going on the plane, keeping in mind that's not per person, that's for the plane. So if there's 4 or 5 of you going on the aircraft, it becomes economically viable to do that. It's not. We believe the uptick is going to come really more initially from the light aircraft, light jet segment, which will be, the airlines are going to, when they eventually come back on, of course, are going to look at their more profitable routes, the long haul aircraft and long haul trips and so forth. But it's the feeder services that are concerning. Already now, if you look, in example, to get to, if I had to say, Nuremberg, which is, of course, a home to a lot of manufacturing in Germany and so forth. It was already, because I used to go there quite often, difficult to get there before. It's difficult to get to by rail, and it's difficult to get to by car. You landed up on $1,000 flight with Swiss to do a Zurich to Nuremberg and back, which is 30 minutes. And those kind of feeder services, I think, is where the light jet segment is going to be good. There's going to be the 4 to 6 seater round trip for the day, or maybe you even want to do sort of a bit of a road trip. Perhaps it's going to be a London to Munich, do your meeting in Munich, stop in Paris, do the other meeting, and then back, at home in time for tea with the family, because you don't want to be in hotels and so forth. And I think another point to keep in mind is the time, because you talk about cost, but time is money. And if you've got your executives going to Heathrow, and the airlines are eventually going to go back to 60% capacity, because that's what the EU is talking about now. Airlines are only able to operate 60% capacity. You're going to have 4-hour check-ins. This is what I'm hearing, and maybe Rob knows more than this. Is not my world. But you've got 4-hour check-ins for short flights because of social distancing, security, health checks before you get on. It's going to make it really unpleasant at first. So there is a time cost balance here. And if you've got to get to a place to open a factory so people can go back to work and we can start rebuilding economies, then that's something that really needs to be considered, because time is money.
Really interesting. And it feeds very nicely into Shirley's question, which is, what is your view in terms of social distancing on flight travel? Is this actually viable?
No, but there's actually there's a good case study. We wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. After SARS, there was a very famous case. So 1% of all the people who died of SARS died from one flight and caught it on one flight. Yeah. 700 people died of SARS. 6 caught it on one flight, 7 including the guy who actually had it. And there was some interesting medical studies afterwards of how it worked. Some of the people who died were 7 rows ahead of the person who had the symptoms. The general view is that 2 rows, you can't transmit beyond 2 rows. But a number of the people who died from this flight were up to 7 rows away from the guy who had it. Now, perhaps they walked past him going to the loo, perhaps they were next to him, perhaps he walked past them too close when he boarded. It's not clear. But it was only a 3-hour flight as well. The previous view was that anything up to 8 hours was totally safe anyway. But this, SARS was transmissible up to 7 rows away from where the guy was sitting. So obviously, if that's the case, then you're wasting your time doing any sort of social distancing. It's more about, I think, checking people who are boarding, doing temperature checks. It's you might feel happier if you're not sitting next to someone, but if you're an empty middle seat, but the guy behind you is coughing his guts out and he's coughing at the back of your head, then you're probably not going to feel too great about it either. So realistically, it's not going to happen. There will be some other restrictions in place, but I'm not quite sure what those are. Temperature checks are not. Temperature checks don't get everyone, but they get some. And it's one of those games where there's no silver bullet, but you can do 4 or 5 things which might pick up 2/3 of cases before people board. And if you can do that, then it's okay. But the other problems, when you start doing temperature checks, imagine you fly somewhere on holiday, and on the way back, you get picked up by a temperature check and told you can't board. And then you have to go, and you're then stuck in quarantine in Dubai for 2 weeks because you simply can't leave the country then. Do you want to take that risk? What would happen if you couldn't get back from wherever you were and you got a business trip and there's a risk that you'll be stopped at the airport on the way home and you can't get back to your family for 2 weeks because you're forced into quarantine? Would you take that risk? There's a lot of moving parts here and no one's really quite sure how it's going to work.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I was meant to have moved to Spain 7 weeks ago, and all our stuff is over there, actually, in a van. But my husband and I keep talking about the fact that actually, what is it going to be before we're allowed to go? Are they going to, because our town in Spain is totally locked down. Nobody is even allowed to go out to the supermarket currently, other than their local supermarket, and you can be fined for doing so. So to me, I'm there going, well, what are they going to need before we can actually go? Are they going to need some kind of certificate to say that we haven't got it? How is that going to work? All right. Let's talk a little bit about hotels then, because obviously hotels have been shut in various places across the world. Are they putting things in place in order to try and protect people that are staying there as well?
Yeah, I'm getting a regular stream of emails now from companies announcing their new policies. Hyatt announced one this morning. Marriott and Hilton have already formally announced new brand-wide cleaning policies. Is this just PR fluff? It's very hard to tell. For start, most of these hotels are franchised operations, so you don't have complete day-to-day control. A lot of the cleaning is done by relatively low-wage local staff who may or may not. We've all found dodgy stuff in our hotel rooms at some point or another that cleaners missed. So whether you want to trust them on this, I don't know. It's difficult. And again, it's back to how much of it is just done to keep people's minds happy, and how much is actually having a real impact on health. It's very difficult. Are they have to leave? Should you leave a room empty for a couple of days if someone's checked out? But should you operate at a further capacity? Will you get cleaning during your stay, or will people just clean the room afterwards, so the cleaners don't have to go in while you're still in the building? It's again no easy answers, and the fact that you can't actually tell if a lot of this cleaning's been done or not. Obviously, you can't tell if something is disinfected. You can't tell if your bed's been sprayed with a certain sort of spray. Means realistically, would you want to gamble it being done? Would you actually care if it was done? It's tricky. Again, I'm relatively sanguine about these things, but a lot of people are more risk averse than me, I think.
Yes, but I think also if you have kids and whatever, it's a situation where you sit there and you think, well, okay. So, or in my case, my husband is 20 years older than me, and he's in the high risk category. So I think, well, if I fly and I get it, then what risk has he got? So that's why I'm just saying I'm absolutely not going to travel now until there is a vaccine, just because it's such a risk.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for the average British person, that's not fundamentally realistic, but we need to see, don't we? Even some of the cruise lines are saying, forward bookings for next year are currently going incredibly well. And if the cruise lines are seeing really good advanced bookings after all that's gone on, then the airlines may have trouble at all. But it's I think the luxury end might work better. If you go to a Four Seasons, but a massive property, but only 100 bedrooms, that can easily serve everyone breakfast in their room, as well-spaced restaurants, that's relatively easy to operate. A lot of these big holiday hotels with 2,000 rooms on a relatively small property, a relatively small footprint, there's nothing they can do. effectively to do the sort of distancing that's required. So, it may be that the very high-end properties can open up before a lot of the more mass marketplaces. But then, oddly enough, because things like Holiday Inn Expresses and the like don't normally have restaurants. Perhaps they can reopen. Probably you get a grab bag, you get a paper bag outside your room in the morning with a bottle of orange juice, yogurt in it, a banana. Perhaps that's how it's going to be. Then breakfast dealt with as well. Hoxton hotels have done that forever since they opened. Actually, that's always been their way of operating. Perhaps that's the way. Don't know.
What do you think the implications are going to be for travel insurance, especially for people who, have underlying health issues?
Yeah. I mean, it's virtually impossible now to buy a policy which will cover coronavirus. I think a bigger problem actually is if we do get through the EU transition period this year and your EHIC cards cease to function. That's a bigger issue, because that means even traveling in Europe would leave you uninsured, totally uninsured. European health insurance cards are not a panacea, but they do at least guarantee you healthcare at the same price as a local would pay, which in most cases is virtually nothing. Going to the US would be very difficult. Going away for longer periods, I think, is also harder as well. If I have to do a 2-day business trip, as long as I feel healthy on the day I fly, the odds are good that I'll still be fine when I need to fly back. If you're going away on a 2-week trip, there's a good chance you could catch something during those 2 weeks and then be refused permission to fly back and then be stuck. You can't fly out, so you're stuck in the country where you're at. And then you can't get medical care because you're not insured for coronavirus. That's a very nasty spiral you're into then. Eventually, even if you want to fly home for UK medical treatment, you won't be able to unless you, end up on a private jet, because the airlines won't let you back on. What do you do then? That's the biggest risk for places like the US, I think, where certainly for longer holidays, where people are going to be very, very nervous about being refused permission to fly back and then being forced back on unbelievably expensive US medical care with insurance that won't cover coronavirus. But for 2 days in Berlin, not a problem. Certainly until the EU transition period ends.
Do you fly people who are feeling unwell, Jeff?
At the moment, no. I mean, the crew, of course, there are medical repatriation aircraft, specialist units, or companies that we use, including one here in Switzerland called Riga. And they've got these sort of tents over the stretchers and you can medically repatriate them, and that's with an ICU or a doctor and an ICU nurse. But generally, no. I mean, our passengers are asked to fill in questionnaires, and there is, the crew don't shake their hands when they get on board, which is quite unusual, but they have to do that part as well. But no, we wouldn't do that, because it's not just a risk to other passengers that might be on the plane as well, of course, but it's the crew, the handling staff, the people in the private terminal, and so forth, and it's just not socially responsible. And so what we have found on our side is that a lot of the operators and suppliers that we work with, we've put into our contract a COVID-19 clause, which states that if our passengers are not well or the authorities change the regulations and so forth, that there are no cancellation fees. And I must say, we've not had any pushback on that yet, because people understand, on that level, that if something changes on a government level or there's an illness, they don't want you to travel anyway. And if the authorities on the two countries can't agree that they want to let you in, it's not your responsibility on that case. So there we've been quite lucky, and the suppliers have worked with us on that. But no, generally, if you're unwell, please don't get on an aeroplane.
So final question to both of you, and I'm interested in both your take on this. What are the most important things that the EAs are going to have to consider moving forward when they're booking, travel and accommodation for their executives? What advice would you be giving them? Can I come to Rob first on that?
I think, well, first in terms of simple refundability, it's when do you book? The earlier you price, there's always going to be capacity. There's going to be empty seats around for a long time. So the pressure to book really early is probably not there anymore. And if you book early, you're tying yourself into potential hassle over getting refunds. you're also at risk if entry rules change for certain countries after you've booked. So to the extent that you can, I would just hold off booking as late as you can. I don't think you'll lose out, and you'll make your life easier. Insurance-wise, you need to be very careful. This might require you to get more involved in, unfortunately, any underlying health problems that your boss may have and perhaps hasn't told you about, but reasons why you might be more careful about booking him in. Certainly, if insurance doesn't cover everything. Obviously, if it's a corporate trip, corporate insurance should cover all this anyway, but you can never be too sure on these things. Hotels, again, I'd say something with a small number of rooms, big footprint, lots of public space for easy circulation, possibly somewhere that's very close to where you need to be so you can avoid public transport. I think these are relatively standard stuff anyway, but I think this is going to be a good lesson going forward. Not massive 1,000-room hotels on the edge of cities that require public transport to get to where you need to be. That's not the way forward.
That's great advice. And what about you, Jeff? What would you like to say?
From our side, I think the key is give us as much notice as possible and as much documentation and reason for travel that you can. And with that, we're able to then manage expectations, quite early on and advise what's possible and what's not. Typically, as I've said before, our clients normally will call us 24 hours before, 48 hours before, even for a big trip. And that has become quite limiting now. So the more notice you have, let us know. We're able to have a look at it and advise you what we can do. And that would be the key. As you know, we don't get involved in hotels and all the other parts. I can't really comment on that. But what I can tell you is that, time on our side is the friend, because you're not going to necessarily pay a cancellation fee if we've contracted it as such. If the trip's important and the right paperwork's in place, generally it can be done.
Fantastic. And can you, just as we finish off, give everybody your contact details? So where can they find you, Jeff, if they want to make contact with you?
The easiest thing, shall I write it somewhere, or should just, you
can write it. I will make sure that it goes out anyway.
Okay. The best is the easiest way to get in touch with us, if you want a quick estimate and so forth, is about a year ago, we launched our Vertis Aviation app, which is on the Apple Store and also on Google Play. So what you can do there is you can go in and you have to register, but then you'll actually get live pricing as well. There's no financial commitment or obligation or anything like that. Basically, you can go and have a look at the pricing, put in the routes that you want, the dates and so forth. It'll spit out a price. And if it's something that you're interested in, you just click send and it comes to us. We'll come back to you and tell you if it's possible or not, the pricing is confirmed, etc., etc. And it's a pretty quick way to gauge that point, because a lot of people think that private aviation is not accessible. It is, particularly if there's a few people traveling, and I think that's a nice way to do it. Alternatively, all our contact details are on the website as well, which Lucy had sort of scrolling along the bottom a little while ago.
It did indeed, yes. And what about you, Rob? You are the guru for all this stuff, and I love getting your information every day. So how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, historically, the website is head4points.com. However you spell it, it still diverts. Normally, we are a key source of resource for news on frequent flyer schemes, hotel loyalty schemes, airline status, how to get it, how to make the most of it. That's changed a bit in the last few weeks, obviously. We're now fundamentally, we've got a bit more of a general airline news site to the extent of coronavirus, a lot of who's flying where, who's doing what, who's reopening when. But yeah, fundamentally, we're a miles and points status general site. Possibly more interesting for your boss than for yourselves, but if you ever ask questions about what you can do with a British Airways Gold Card, or what's the best lounge at a certain airport, or which route to a certain place will get you most status points, or the quickest way your boss can retain his gold card if he's getting a bit short, that's the kind of stuff we cover. That's our bread and butter. Generally 3 articles a day covering various aspects of airline and hotel loyalty.
That's fantastic. So I've put both of your web addresses up on the feed so that they're able to contact you if they want to. Thank you both very much for an amazing session. I have learned a huge amount, and I have to admit that part of the reason I was so keen to get you both on was because I wanted to know, because I spend most of my life on a plane. I think I was only in London 12 weeks last year, and I wanted to know what the Gen was, and I found it hugely helpful, and I know the assistants will as well, because I can see that the comments are coming up saying what an amazing session it was. For those of you that are watching out there, we have sessions coming up with Ask the Expert on all things recruitment. So if you're unemployed, if you're wanting to move, if you're starting a new job, whatever it happens to be, we're going to have a couple of experts coming up very shortly to talk about that. And we also have another amazing session coming up from somebody that organises virtual events. So if your company has said to you, we want you to organise an awards or a conference or something like that, but they want you to do it virtually this year, we're going to have an Ask the Expert session on that as well. So just watch this space. But in the meantime, guys, thank you both so much for giving your time this afternoon to talk to the assistants. I know they really have valued the information. So
thank you, Lucy.
Thanks,
thank
Lucy.
you so much for your
really
time.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good.